Hey guys, welcome to Through the Bible Verse by Verse, a plain and simple study through the entire Bible, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse. We are in Genesis chapter 9. Now, the next three chapters, this is now post-flood. So the entire world has changed at this point. I mean, it changed with Adam. And so now, as we kind of move through the Old Testament, we come through kind of another major shift. And this is now post-flood. God had destroyed that generation, those few generations from Adam to Noah, for the immense wickedness. And that's you kind of have you have to look at it that way. It was every single person on the planet was wicked, except Noah and his family. And then even with Noah and his family, they were sinful. However, but every single person, which tells us that that's the kind of the criteria when you have this God doing this mass judgment. But now things have changed. So now this post-flood world is going to be repopulated. Amazing how fast the repopulation can take. And but we see things now as we see the normal, the sinful cursed world normal. As we move forward, we should always keep in mind, and of course I'm going to continue to say this, that we're viewing the world through a sinful world. In other words, the aim of the flood was never to cleanse the world per se. In other words, God's aim here wasn't to repopulate the earth with good people. That was never the aim of the flood. The flood was judging the immense wickedness that had happened in such a short period of time. There will be things that God will do, interjecting that will kind of, hold off man getting to that point that he is that sinful that he will then destroy the earth that way. We're going to see this in just, coming up in this verse where God populates the earth, or when he populates the earth, he explains that he will never flood the earth again. But there will be things in which he will put into place that will kind of stop that. Remember, from Adam to Noah, and we can even say from Adam to Moses, but in particularly from Adam to Noah, there was no law. There was no what's right and wrong in the sense and form of the law. Sin dominated. Remember, he told Cain in chapter 4, sin is crouching at the door for you. Well, what was that sin? That rebellion against God. The rebellion to do wrong, to rebel against God's goodness. That's sin. Well, God is going to, we're going to see, throughout human history now, God interjecting things that will prevent man from getting to that place, because Jesus did say that at the time of his second coming, it will be like the days of Noah. In order to understand that, remember, every single person thought and actions were evil continually, all the time, non-stop. Every person. So this is the way it's going to be at the time of Noah. When Jesus comes back. So this repopulation of the earth here, and again, let me just say this again, the aim of the destruction, the flood was never, and then Noah was never to repopulate the earth, make it good. It is still sinful. And we're going to see very sinful man. So again, I'll say this as we move forward in there, but man will be sinful because he is sinful. So all of the stuff that we're going to read here is going to scratch your head. You're going to go, what the heck was that? Because man is sinful. Let me also say this. So then you got to say, well, what is God doing? God is putting up with man's sin for the purpose of bringing in his son. So when we see the gross sin, the gross perversion, and we will see it, understand that, again, the way that God is changing the world is through his son, Jesus Christ, which is, you can't just tell sinful man, stop sinning. There's actual denomination. And the old school of this denomination actually just says that. Old school, my grandmother was a part of it, the Old Church of God in Christ. That basically what they said was, if you want to be saved, stop sinning. One of the most asinine things you ever heard of. But they taught this, and a lot of the old school people still teach it. It's still a part of their denomination. Just stop sinning. Well, how? They never tell you how. And then, of course, what they mean by stop sinning is, well, don't be worldly. It is a completely American culture. So, I grew up in the 70s. It was more defined because the 70s you had the butterfly sleeve shirts and the bell-bottom pants, right? And the girls had the mini skirts and you had the afro. They call that sinful. So if you just stop doing those things, and you don't drink or smoke and curse, of course, don't go to school and dance, they say, oh, you're holy. Didn't change anybody, but that's what they meant by that. But God never said, right? He never said just stop sinning, because why? You have a sinful nature. The lack of their teaching was the problem there. Okay, so, but when you look at how gross and perverse, and we're going to see this, that why is God allowing this? Because man is sinful. God allows slavery. God allows the domination of women, the mistreatment of women. I mean, and then yet it's not, God is kind of sitting back. Why? Because God is doing his thing, bringing in his son, bringing in redemption. All right, so verse 1 says, God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, now this is them coming out of the ark. All right, the flood is dried up, remember, and now God is blessing him. He said, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. So kind of the same command that he gave Adam, except the difference was Adam was a sin-free world. This is a sinful world, full of sin. Full of sin. Verse 2, the fear and terror of you will be in every living creature on earth, every bird, every of the sky, every creature that crawls on the ground, and all the fish of the sea that are placed under your authority. Every living creature would be, I'm going to stop right here. I want you to understand, notice one of the reasons why the animal kingdom doesn't rebel. A few years ago, there was an actual TV series. I believe it was called Zoo. And the premise of the series, and it might have been by I think a popular author as well, the book. But the premise of the series was that the animal kingdom all over the world decided, you know what, we're tired of man. And then they rebelled and they started attacking men. A very interesting series. Obviously, from a biblical perspective, it was kind of interesting to me. But the reason why that doesn't happen, it doesn't happen because, notice this, God has already commanded the animals. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not animal attacks. Understand that most animal attacks usually have, you got too close to animals. And of course, we're seeing a progression of sin too, by the way. But for the most part, think about it, the animal kingdom doesn't really bother us unless you get too close. Like there are some people that are just plain to me stupid. You want to get so close and take a picture with a bear that's crouching or a lion, okay? or you get to see these stupid people that try to get it. I just saw a video, this is kind of an older video, but I saw it again, where a stupid man who put his suit jacket over the mouth of an alligator and then tried to, whatever he was doing, and the alligator grabbed hold of his arm, and luckily he didn't tear it off. People are stupid though. Okay, then there's rabbit animals and stuff. But pretty much most animals, there are animals that attack, and certainly I don't want to get too far out of my realm here. I'm not, a person that knows too much about animals. What I'm saying is that a lot of animals just rapidly are not conspiring to attack human. Okay, usually it's you got too close. They may be hungry, they may be rabid or sick. Okay, and but then also we have the ability to overpower them. Right? We have guns, things like that. We have guns. So he says, but everyone would be. He said the fear of you. So pretty much this is still true. Verse 3. Notice he says this: they are placed under your authority as well. So if you wanted to make a case for zoos, a lot of people, and let me say this because I think one of the most stupidest things I hear is, the animal rights. Let's say this: when you have people that have these ideologies, primarily people who don't know God. I'll just leave it at that. They just don't know God, so they come up with these animals that need, you spending money at, some of these pet stores and stuff. The kind of money people are spending. Let me just say, I think most people don't know God. I'll just leave it at that. My opinion too. All right. Verse 3. Every living creature would be food for you. As I gave the green plants, I've given you everything. However, you must not eat meat with its lifeblood in it. I will require the life of every man and every animal and every man for your life and your blood. I will require the life of each man's brother and a man for his life. Now, before I go on and get to this one thing here, notice he says here that every food. So this would be modified for Israel under the law. And when we get to the law of Moses, which coming up in the next book, but the law of Moses was only for Israel, and we'll get to that. The prohibition against eating certain food for Israel. Notice he sets here, as he's talking to Noah, and this is what? The new repopulation now of a sin-cursed world. No restrictions. Now this is not talking about which foods are healthy for you or not healthy for you. That's not his argument. That's not his point here. Basically, he's saying there are no lawful foods, as it will be instituted under the law. Okay? So, look, I'm a man that I have to watch what I eat because my family history. Other people can eat whatever they want. I do envy that, but I can't. So I can't eat the kind of food that I want to eat every single day, because I would. Fried foods. Oh, okay. Anyway, I digress. So verse 6. Now let me read verse 5 again. I will require the life of every animal and every man for your life and your blood. I will require the life of each man's brother for a man's life. Whoever sheds man's blood, his blood will be his blood will be shed by man. For God made man in his image. So the kind of question here is God against the, well, let me just make the statement. As we see here, God institutes the death penalty right here. Okay, so let me just say this. Notice the reason why, and the chief primary reason for the death penalty. When you murder, that's it. If a man murders someone, okay, not even manslaughter or accidentally, but man. Now, by the way, later on, these things would be kind of spelled out. You know, the difference between murder and manslaughter. You know, accidental death, things like that, or not unintentional death. Okay, some things would be under manslaughter. There are things that you are guilty of. So, like for example, you may get in a car drunk and drive. So you did not intend to kill anyone, but you certainly killed someone. Yeah, I think it's a different classification in the law. That DUI, I think you are charged with murder. But murder itself means the intentional killing, taking of a life, like Cain murdered Abel. Okay, so that'd be a difference if you were working in the field and a rock accidentally struck someone and then killed someone. That's manslaughter. But at the same time, if you knew that, let's say for example, that your tool was defective, you're still guilty. The death penalty cases today, I am on the one hand for death penalty because there are some people who are very sinful, and they need to leave the earth because they are definitely sinful and dangerous to the earth. The problem with the death penalty is that sometimes we have equally evil people who are administering the law. And that's unfortunate that today we have people who are in positions of power in law are equally evil. For that reason, then I'm against the death penalty unless it can be demonstrated that the law is administrated in a fair, equal way. You have prosecutors that will prosecute someone knowing that they don't have enough evidence, knowing that they're innocent. A good example of this was the Central Park 5, that even when the evidence came out, they still said, well, they're still guilty. So when you have those kind of people in office, I'm very much against the death penalty. However, we can see here God clearly stating that the death penalty should be in effect. God put it in effect. And I think a lot of heartaches has happened because we're not obeying God's command here by instituting the death penalty. Because a lot of people, now some people will say, well, the death penalty doesn't deter crime. Who said it's supposed to? It's to punish evildoers. That's what the death penalty is for. You kill someone, the idea is to deter. That's what the death penalty is for. So, the idea that if you are able to kill people, the problem is we're not saying it's going to deter, but that person won't be free to murder anyone else. But as usual, the problem again is sinful man, as we will continue to see. All right, guys, I'm going to pick it up in the next study. I'm going to continue on in chapter 9. All right, guys, see you in the next study.